Hi, I'm Chris Chinchilla, and in this video I'm going to take a look at the Fishman Tripleplay Express MIDI guitar pickup. I used to be a guitar player back in the day, but more recently I have been experimenting with electronic drums, MIDI devices, DAWs, that kind of thing. So taking that analog instrument that I'm very used to playing and converting it into MIDI signals was something that's always interested me, and I was quite excited to try this relatively affordable but good quality device. If you enjoy this video, you can find more about me at chrischinchilla.com and more about the Tripleplay Express at the link below. With all that out of the way, let's get started. So this is the box. Nice little semi-magnetic strip there. Not a tremendous amount here. It doesn't really need to be, I guess. You can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bits, I don't know, receivers, I suppose, that match the strings. And what have we got here? Oops. USB-C connector. And some buttons. And then quick start guide, software, guarantee of course, various other bits and pieces, sticky things, risers, screwdriver. This actually looks relatively comprehensive, so I should probably have a bit of a read of this first and then get it installed on the guitar. So first you actually need to get to the bridge. So you have to take the strings off the guitar. And the bridge on the Mustang is actually kind of a pain, actually, and so is restringing it. So this could take a little bit of time, and the instructions for the pickup show the different ways you could do this based on the bridge you have. The Mustang bridge is a little bit special, maybe. It's kind of a mix between all sorts. And there's also quite a large gap between the beginning of the scratch plate and the bottom of the body. And this causes a few stability issues with keeping the pickup stuck on, which you'll see later on. But now things are off. We can first mount this bracket, which everything needs. Here, that's pretty straightforward. It just goes over the feet. This is just one way you can mount it, but it's the most recommended way. You basically put the kind of the mounting bracket for the unit itself, not the pickup part, over the strap. It's got a nice cork sort of softening there as well. And then you screw it back in, basically. And now with the pickup mount in place and the receiver, for want of a better word, mount in place, you can take this sticky magnet, stick it over the holder there. And that stays actually in place. Everything's metal here. It's fairly solidly made, which is good. And here's the receiver unit. It just sort of slots on there. It comes off occasionally because the connector between it and the pickup is relatively short. As you can see, I alluded to here, and that also sticks on. If you have a little bit more distance between the body and the strings, then there are different height adapters that you slot the pickup into before sticking it onto the mount. And here's the ones I went with. So there's not much space between on this guitar. So peel off the sticky part. And then it clicks in to this slot on the left, basically, the pickup part. So you can kind of adjust it. And again, it's quite snug. You can't really hear it clicking in, but it's clicking in on the left there, and then sits in place there. And you can see what I've been alluded to, that cable between the pickup and the unit is a little tight on this guitar. But I couldn't really get any closer. So it's just the nature of this rather peculiar guitar, to be honest with you. Still don't even know if I like it, but it's a strange guitar. There's this cool little string spacer checker in the shape of a guitar that you can then use to check the distance between the pickups and the strings. There should be very little space without it buzzing. This is a little too much height at the moment. And you can see there's these two small adjustment holes on each side of the pickup where you can raise it up or down to suit. This may also mean that you need to adjust the guitar bridge itself slightly. I found that some of my top strings needed, the bridge needed adjusting somewhat. And this is everything in place. You can see now, in addition to the guitar cable, you can have the USB cable plugged in. It feels and looks rather odd having these multiple cables coming out of the guitar. But there we go. And we have these buttons here and a dial underneath. I'll explain what they do later. And then you plug the other end of the cable into the computer, of course. So first you can use the pickup in any kind of DAW, just as a standard MIDI input device. In this example, I am using Ableton Live. If you've ever looked at Ableton Live MIDI settings, you can sort of see what's expected here. There seems to be a limit of 6 devices to add here, so I'm not quite sure what I need to change because I seem to have a lot. But it doesn't really matter, because if you take a look down the bottom under the inputs and outputs, you can see the triple play. And it gives 2 inputs and outputs, guitar and control. I'm not 100% sure what control does in the context of live anyway. Something to investigate maybe later, but guitar is the main one we actually need. So on a track here, I will select the input. You can see the 2 different options here. Now set an instrument. I'm going to use the Spitfire Symphony Orchestra, just, I don't know, something to sound very dramatic. And pick some violins. This is going to sound a bit odd on the long setting. You can also try things like pizzicato, etc. The important thing to note with this plugin in particular is you can see where the default mapping is. And you have to figure out how these notes map on the guitar fretboard to actually trigger anything in this particular plugin. This varies on the plugin, of course. It's just very relevant to this initial one. So you can see those first few notes I played were too low. So now I go higher up with the fretboard and it triggers. And yeah, it's what you would expect. I play the guitar and it plays MIDI notes. Not everything quite works in this plugin. String bending doesn't really work. Chords, doesn't cope with that well. But individual notes, even groups of notes. Kind of thing works okay. Obviously something with a longer sustain than the actual guitar feels a bit strange as well. So on pizzicato it sounds far more appropriate for a guitar maybe. So if I change the instrument to something simpler, just a basic synth of some description. Sounds good. And now wherever I play, it will trigger. So again, you hear that string bending had a different effect. Chords work slightly better. In addition to just playing through a DAW and doing whatever you do with a MIDI device into a DAW, the pickup also ships with a couple of default applications, the Tripleplay host and the Tripleplay utility. And the host also comes with something called Synth Master, which you'll see very soon. And this is the basic interface. It's a little bit confusing to begin with. And I think, in honesty, I'm still figuring out some of the details of it. But I will go through some of what I picked up. I always like to start with looking at settings. So you can make sure the audio is working.
Sorry about that. You can change the way the fretboard looks, which is incredibly essential, of course. There we go. This is basically like mine-ish. And I'm just going to double check everything is up to date. Now, it's worth mentioning here that it only supports VST and VST3 plugins. So I have a tendency to keep my setup quite clean and remove those and just keep the audio units. So I may need to re-add some of those. So on the default setup, on one split, and I'll come to what those mean in a minute, that's what you get. You can see there's like a level indicator on each string, and it's triggering the synth master behind the scenes. And now pressing the control buttons will do something. In this case, by default, it changes patches. There's up and a down. And there's also functions associated with if you press both. And the pickup has a volume control, which I think I showed earlier. Annoyingly, it seems to, every time you change a patch, it closes the SynthMaster plugin, which is somewhat annoying. But there we go. So I'll get it back. I mean, this SynthMaster looks interesting in itself, but that's a whole other. I've also realized my guitar is wildly out of tune, so it's an opportunity to do some tuning through a MIDI plugin, which feels kind of weird, but there we go. Welcome to the digital music world. You can also see that when the string is playing, it lights up a light on the pickup, the virtual pickup in the interface. There we go. Those strings were way too high. I won't put you through the pains of listening to someone tune. Okay, that's better, isn't it? Chords kind of work better here. Pitch bend is, string bend is kind of handled. Drone works to a degree. So let's have a look at this split. You can split by string and fret, and you long press on the mixer interface here to pick an instrument. I'm going to go crazy and try using a drum plugin. I don't think this is going to work. I mean, it should, but figuring out the mapping is probably more challenging. It's also, you see that it injects its own parameters into the plugin, which is interesting. Let's see if this does anything. No. Doesn't seem to trigger anything. Drum patches tend to be mapped fairly low, so it could be that the guitar fretboard is too high. In Modo Drum's particular case, I could go and remap, but if it's really worth it in this case. Playing drums on the guitar, I don't know how appropriate that is anyway, but in theory it should work. So let's try something that makes a bit more sense. I'm going to try and have two different instances of the synth master. So I'll change the instrument. I don't really know what any of these sound like, so I'm just going to pick something random. And now in theory, when I play one set of strings, I get one instrument, and if I play the others, I get a different instrument. That's why it's hard to play on a guitar. So this is a strange combination, but probably illustrates things. Yeah, maybe not the best combination, but you can also see that some of my pickup settings or sensitivity settings need to be adjusted. The string is coming through a bit loud on the pickup. But this could be interesting for playing like a bass instrument and a lead instrument, for example. And you can keep adding splits here to, have all sorts of different instrument settings. This gets, you'd have to remember them all, of course. And what is guitar? Guitar is actually the analog input. So don't have the guitar plugged in right now. So this is actually just what is coming through the microphone. So it's going to sound a bit weird, but you could plug the cable to the guitar as well and get the live sound plus the MIDI sound, which gets some really interesting combinations. So you can hear the live guitar sound a little bit. You get the idea. That's actually quite a cool embellishment of an amplified guitar, for example. And then finally is the utility application. This does kind of what you'd expect. Lets you change a few default parameters and settings of the device, including the way the MIDI is treated, transposing, the bend range, bend mode. Here you could also micro adjust the inputs without having to do it through the hardware, which is pretty useful. If you can't get the screwdriver to be quite right, the physicalities of some guitars just don't always work. Tuner, again, if you don't have enough on your system already. And updates, reminders, that kind of thing. And how to change what the buttons do, should you want to. And that was my look at the Fishman Tripleplay Express. Quite fascinating. It's going to take a little bit more time experimenting with that, but some of the creative potential is quite interesting. Thank you very much to James Harding for helping me with some of the first parts of the video. Thank you very much to my... there are some people in a room behind me sometimes. Very much thanks to Alex for helping me with some of the other filming. It was quite hard to do some of this all on my own, which is why the video and the audio jumps around. If you enjoyed what you saw, you can find more about me at christiangiller.com, or of course click any of the supporting links down below, or leave a comment if you'd like me to do more content like this. I would love to know, because it's super fun to make. Thank you very much for joining me. Take care, everybody.